Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Metal Forge Reviews. Today we have another interview segment for you featuring the powerful and mighty Sarah Ann. Sarah is the frontwoman of the epic heavy doom metal band Smoulder. Are you not familiar with them? Have a listen. It was really cool to talk to Sarah because not only do we consider her a fellow musician, but she is also a colleague in the music journalism scene. In the upcoming conversation, we dig into the history of Smoulder, how their fans reacted to the cancellation of their 2020 tour due to the pandemic, what it was like recording their EP Dream Quest Ends, and how Sarah finds all these radical bands that she talks about on Banger TV. If you've liked our past interviews, you're really going to enjoy this one. While you're watching, please share this video to support Smoulder. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel as well. We have list videos, other interviews, reviews, and reacts. Our channel is growing and you help us run the Forge. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the interview. Hey everyone. Today we have the great Sarah Ann, lead vocalist of the epic doom band Smoulder. Sarah, thanks for joining us on Metal Forge Reviews.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You wear a couple different hats that we thought would be fun to chat about. First, let's talk about your role as the vocalist in the epic heavy metal doom band Smoulder. Tell us about how the band got started and what inspired you to go from being a drummer to the front woman of the band.
So Vincent and I formed the band, I think, like 7 years ago now. And when we did, he was switching over from his main instrument of bass, and I was learning drums. And we both were just kind of learning together, and we both really wanted to make like a doom band that was not like popular at the time. Like the city that we used to live in, Calgary, had a really like stonery scene, and we just did not want to be a stoner doom band. Like we wanted to be like classic doom, like Reverend Bizarre, Lamp of Thoth, Solstice, Candlemass, that kind of stuff. So we started jamming together, and we just never really found anyone else who kind of got what we were into. And, we started, watching like tons of sword and sorcery movies, and then exchanging mixtapes and like all that other kind of stuff. So our like band and like our relationship like really formed around that like mutual interest. So Calgary has been going through rough economic times. I think all of Alberta has, just because it's dependent on like the tar sands. And so by the time that we were considering relocating, Calgary had been through, I think it was its third recession in 10 years. And we were just at the point where we were both kind of like, okay, like having a job here consistently is difficult. I was working at a company that I could just see was about to go under. So we decided to relocate to Toronto. And when we did that, we were like, oh, affording a jam space and rent in a city where rent costs 3 times as much as our current city. That's going to suck. So at that point, like we had been jamming a lot. And so the first song that we ever wrote was Sword Woman, and I had written the lyrics and like the instrumentation, and Vincent was singing and playing guitar. And it got to the point where I was like, I think a woman should be singing this. It's clearly a song about a woman, and there's like words from a woman. So I was singing like the last parts while doing that double kick part, and it was just like horrible, like it's hard to sing. So we kind of just thought, okay, maybe we should consider switching over. And then when we moved here and we're like, oh, rent is very expensive, and so is a jam space, we just decided like it was time for me to focus on singing because like I'm a good singer, so it worked.
Easy as that.
Yeah.
So your first full length seemed to take the metal scene by storm. What inspired the themes on the album, and what went into writing this amazing debut?
Yeah, so as I was saying earlier about like sword and sorcery movies, and just kind of like our love of Candlemass and Reverend Bizarre and Omen and like Jeg Panzer and stuff like that. I don't know, we came from that world. I think Vincent Moore was the traditional metal fan and I was more of the doom fan. And as we showed each other more and more bands, it just kind of ended up in this like stylistic merging that really made sense. And, you know, lyrically, I think like Sword and Sorcery has long been a really important genre of literature for me personally. And I've always really like related to strong heroes. And I mean, it's no secret that Smoulder focuses a lot on female characters. And that's always been my jam. Like all the way from the time I was 12 years old, I've always been a hardcore tomboy. I've always been somebody who's like into, you know, hunting and fishing and like, you know, shooting arrows and like climbing and all those other types of things. So I just like, I wanted a heavy metal band that made me feel like, you know, like the barbarian on the cover of all the albums, which is always a dude. And so like, as those themes started coming together stronger and stronger, I was just like, you know, reading tons of Sword and Sorcery with female heroes and all that other stuff. And it just, you know, it was one of those things that just kind of fell together really quickly. And when we got our bandmates, Kevin and Colin, they're friends of ours from the States. And we had gone to Frost and Fire with them when the year that Sirathungal got back together. It got announced. Vincent texted me, said, Sirathungal's back together. I texted him back 10 minutes later, and I said, I bought us 2 tickets. Let's go to the festival. And then we decided to stay with Colin, and he suggested Kevin as the drummer. And I think just all of us writing together, it just became very apparent that we had a lot of, you know, bands in common and like interests in common. And it feels weird because like the guys brought in, you know, 3 of the tracks and we brought 3 of the tracks or 4 of the tracks. So they had 2, we had 4. And they just merged together so seamlessly. Like Kevin and Colin wrote Bastard Steel and Ilian Agarathorm, which people really love those songs. And we do too. They're awesome tracks. And it's kind of shocking that like, you know, they had kind of like the yin to our yang. So it worked out really nicely.
Yeah. The chemistry is great and it's very apparent.
Yeah.
Your most recent release, Dream Quest Ends, is a killer EP. Absolutely loved it. With some new songs, a cover, and some demos. Could you talk about the writing and recording process from this in particular? And do you have any cool stories from the latest studio sessions?
I mean, lots of stuff happened. So those 2 tracks, the new ones, they're both actually Kevin's songs. And when we started writing it, like we knew we wanted to release something relatively quickly after the album came out because we wanted to start touring in Europe. And like you need a fresh release if you're going to be touring as a young band in Europe. So we had kind of started like getting our songs together, being like, okay, what do we have here? And the 2 tracks that Kevin wrote, when he brought them to us, I started being like, okay, like Warrior Witch of Hell was the one that really kind of solidified the theme of the EP. Just because I was like, yeah, I'm reading this really sick trilogy about this warrior blood song, and she's this warrior who has to fight like an evil sorcerer to get her child back from like the goddess Hell, and it was just this really like cool thing that was falling together. And we had already covered Manila Road at Chicago, or in Chicago at Legions of Metal Festival. And people were so stoked on that track. So when those 2 songs were done, and then we licensed the Michael Whalen image, and we were looking at it, and I was writing also Dream Quest Ends around that time because I did a solo hike of the Grand Canyon. So it's about me hiking the Grand Canyon.
Oh, wow.
I like was looking at the words in the song, and I was like, oh, words of Dream Quest End actually coincide with what's happening on the album cover. And images from the album cover also coincide with lyrics from the Manila Road song. So we started realizing like we really put a lot of emphasis on our theme being like very unified. We want our sound, we want our imagery, like everything to have like a very obvious like, you know, like undercurrent running through it. And it felt like the EP had come together the same way that the album had, but totally differently. And that was exactly what we wanted, was just something that like felt like Smoulder, but didn't feel like a repeat of the album. So we all wanted to record together, but unfortunately we just couldn't because we were saving up money for our now botched tours that just were supposed to have happened. So we all decided to record remotely. And yeah, it was a really fun time. Like myself and Vincent and Adam, we all recorded in Toronto, and we did it over one day, which is difficult to do a release in one day. We did the same thing with the demo. We recorded the entire thing in one day. You have to go in super fucking prepared for obvious reasons if you're going to do something like that. And, you know, you have to make sure your stamina is really high up because your performance can drop off really quickly. So we get there, and we decided that for me, I was going to record the Manila Road cover first. And just like I did during the demo, I blew my voice out on the first song.
Oh, man.
And I did the same thing on the demo. So it felt like pretty hilarious that they ended up like packaging the demo on the B side and then on the A side, because when we recorded the demo, we actually drove out to Illinois to record with the guys. They had friends who owned a converted church studio, and I got really sick, and it turns out that I had been diagnosed with walking pneumonia. So I recorded the demo with pneumonia and a lung infection, which is why the vocals are not nearly as good, I think, as they are on the album. And then when it came to recording the EP, I blew out my voice on one song, on the first song.
Oof, wow. I mean, it sounds like that was an adventure in itself. You're a beast. That's crazy.
That's like,
so, I mean, yeah, I mean, you do. It's kind of interesting. We had a conversation. We interviewed Cam Mesmer from Spell a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about similar things about when you're in the studio. It's like, you have to get it. You have to pound the ibuprofen. You need the madness. Just get it, you know? And that's cool.
Yeah, it's stressful, right? Like, you go into the studio wanting to be prepared, and you want to be you want your art to be exactly what you want it to be, you know? Like, when you have a really strong vision for your band, like, nothing underneath the absolute best is good enough, right? Mm-hmm. And you get in there, and sometimes that means, like, I pushed myself way too hard and blew my voice out, and then it was like, all right, got another 9 hours to go. Let's do this.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on this already, but you brought up the tour. And speaking of this release, like, your tour tragically got cut short due to COVID-19. And despite the stressful time, and I understand if it's not something you want to talk about, but it seemed like on your social media, you had a really big, warm outpouring of support. And I kind of wanted to ask you about that. Could you share some things about that experience?
I mean, there's a lot. We've been kind of processing it collectively for the last couple of months, just being stuck at home and, like, trying to just kind of, you know, everybody is grappling, I think, with COVID and, like, how it's impacted their lives. It's hard to, like, pinpoint an exact description, you know, like, everything happened so quickly. It was like, you know, a set of dominoes, like, falling over, and it was just like hit after hit after hit, where it's like, okay, we're not really sure how we're supposed to deal with this. But the fact that our fans and our friends and our family came together the way that they did was kind of shocking and super humbling, you know? And it's interesting because, like, we've done the band since day one, where like, we make it very apparent, like, we are a very left-wing band. Like, we've made that very obvious from, like, the themes of the album, from, like, the messaging, from the donations that we make, all that other kind of stuff. And, you know, it's a little scary to be in that position because, like, a lot of metal is, like, very reactionary. So you kind of, you know, you wonder if it's going to result in trolls. And for us, it's resulted in this, like, massive community of like-minded people really embracing us and really, like, propping us up and supporting us. And, like, that is a really great thing because, you know, going into it, for the longest time, for example, like, I didn't want to be the singer of the band because I had internalized all that misogyny about, like, women only being vocalists and that somehow being not as important as other members of the band. And when I finally, like, switched over and realized that being a singer is, like, incredibly hard and, like, you're carrying, like, the persona and, like, the, you know, that role in the band, I started to realize, like, hey, like, it's time to kind of unpack all this bullshit about, like, how metal and metalheads can make you feel. And, you know, it's been really interesting in that way that, like, we just came to realize that, like, this community that we've been working for a decade to kind of cultivate around us is definitely there and, like, loves us and has supported us in this, like, really beautiful way. And so I think for that, everybody was kind of just blown away. Like, the whole band, like, we message each other back and forth all the time being like, wow, like, look at this thing we just got tagged in on Instagram or, you know, whatever, to just kind of lessen the blow of like not getting to spend all that time together. And yeah, it's, as I said, it's been super humbling and like kind of bizarre to realize that like the community building that you put in, like you get back.
I love that answer so much because and Ben and I are kind of like the same thing, sort of. We come from the New England area, and there's a really great community here in terms of metal. And, you know, that's something that we try to build up. And I love that your band is about community. It's one of the coolest parts about you. So it's one of the things I wanted to ask you about.
We'll talk about what it means for the band to be signed to Cruz del Sur Music, and how did you get discovered by them? And are there any of your label mates that you find to be particularly influential to you or to your band right now?
Yeah, so like Cruz del Sur is like our family. I mean, like I am the band manager, and I put that in quotes because it seems absurd, but like I do all the music management stuff because my career has been music management. And basically we got a message from Enrico. He's the one who runs Cruz del Sur, a couple of weeks before Hammer of Doom. And so we had been asked to play Hammer of Doom. That was our 4th ever show. Ollie took a chance on us, asked us to open that festival, and it was huge, right? And that was our demo vinyl release party. So we got this message from Enrico saying, hey guys, like we want to have a chat when we're at Hammer of Doom. So after your set, let's talk. And I was like, okay, I love Cruz del Sur. We counted between the 5 of us. We owned something like 39 of their albums, like collectively between the 5 of us. For me in particular, you know, there's bands like, you know, Lunar Shadow or like Lord Weird's Laufig or Atlantean Codex or, you know, Crescent Shield. Like there's all these bands that are on the Cruz del Sur label that I absolutely fucking worship. So when it came to them saying, hey, we want to chat with you, we had already received some offers and we hadn't, you know, we had been kind of sussing them out and saying, okay, like, let's get it in writing. What is that going to look like? But when Enrico came to chat with us, I just felt, I was like, this guy knows what he's doing. He's got good taste. It's a label that I absolutely love myself. It's a bunch of bands that I currently love. Like this is a no-brainer. And so, you know, it's funny because like, you know, I deal with Enrico almost every single day still. Like we talk about, you know, represses, about shows, ask him for advice, all that other kind of stuff. And it's funny. He's a very frank and creative person. And it's really great to have somebody that I can bounce ideas off of who trusts my judgment and allows me to steer the band in the direction that I want, because like that's really important to me. Like this is, you know, this is my band, and I want to have that control. And I know that if we had gone with somebody bigger, that we wouldn't have like obtained that amount of control. And if we had gone with someone smaller, then I would have been frustrated, you know. So we're very, very happy with Cruz del Sur. Love them. They're
Excellent.
great.
Smoulder, and you kind of already hit on this, but Smoulder showcases some incredible album artwork that really speaks to the music the listener is about to consume. So when we did some research, realized that you've had the opportunity to work with, and you've hit on this before, but artist Michael Whalen on your albums, and it makes perfect sense. His illustrations fit the music perfectly. Can you talk about the process of how your band works with Michael and creating the images?
So these are both licensed images. So they were both like on previous Sword and Sorcery books that came out in like the 80s. So basically I grew up, my dad is like a huge Frank Frazetta fan. And so I grew up with like Conan comics being all over the house, and like the paintings of Frank Frazetta. And I just kind of was like, okay, I like this. This is good. And as I got older and like more interested in artwork and in music and in heavy metal, I just started really attaching myself to like those romantic painters, because like Frazetta is a romantic painter and Whelan is a romantic painter. And I got really attached to like Alfonso Mucha and like artists like that who just had this very like romantic, beautiful way of depicting the human body. And yeah, so one day Vincent and I were walking and we went into a bookstore and we found this Michael Whalen artwork book, and it was used. It was like $3, and we bought it, and I brought it home, and I was sitting and I was just looking at every single painting, and I opened the page, and you know, there is the Well of Shuen, which is the cover of Times of Obscene Evil. And I just like looked down at it, and I just like looked up at Vincent, and I was like, okay, this is our album cover. Like, anything else. And he was like, well, you know, it might be really hard. Like, it's probably going to be impossible. And I was like, fuck that. I'm good at emailing people. I am good at like getting in contact. I'll do it myself. And so it took like, yeah, I saw the image probably like 3 years before the album came out. I contacted Michael Whalen's family. He has a website. And I was just like, hey, I happen to be a singer and like a songwriter in a heavy metal band. And at that time we were unsigned. And I probably emailed about 25 times before they answered, just being like, hey, just wondering if you got my email. Like, I'm really liking this picture. How can I use it? And finally, I got an email back from Michael Whelan's wife, who works with him. And she was like, well, like, you can use it for a secondary license. We'd be happy to like do that for you guys. And ever since then, you know, we've exchanged lots of super pleasant emails. She's like really into, you know, superheroes, and she was really excited to like hear back from the band. So we just now have a relationship. So we have another painting for the second album, which we've like, you know, we got in our back pocket. We're not going to share it with anyone. And I just want to like have a permanent relationship with him, because literally like the only other band who does is Sorcery-Themed. And like, how perfect is that? Like, I love Sorcery-Themed. Like, I fucking worship Sorcery-Themed. And so to have like that thing in common with this band that I like absolutely love, with a fantasy painter that like dictated a lot of my interests in like romantic, surreal, sci-fi, sword and sorcery, you know, like it was just another one of those things where I was like, okay, this has to come together. And lo and behold, it eventually did.
Yeah, I mean, persistence pays off, and I can tell you love Sorcery-Themed because of your tattoos.
Yes, yeah, I'm a little, like, there's a reason why, you know, the first, like, Smoulder hangout, like, official hangout was the Sorcery-Themed reunion, you know? Like, all of us love Sorcery-Themed, and, like, there's, yeah, Tim Baker's voice, like, oh.
Yeah, you can't beat it.
You can't beat that. He sounds
and
like a warlock.
Yeah, and the new album is still amazing. Like, they still have it, you know? Another question for you. Back in April, you guys did a collaboration with Friends of Canadian Broadcasting, and you released a really awesome acoustic version of Sword Woman. And can you tell us about how you arranged that performance and how you came to work with them? Yeah,
so Friends of Canadian Broadcasting, one of the women who works there is one of my former coworkers at Banger TV, and I work at Banger TV. It's like an online heavy metal review portal on YouTube. And yeah, so one of the women who used to work at Banger is now at Friends of Canadian Broadcasting. And when COVID hit, basically they came out with a program saying like, oh, we want original content from artists in Canada. And so part of what our tour was supposed to be in Greece, we had 4 shows booked. We were going to play Up the Hammers Festival. We were going to play a show in Thessaloniki. And then we were going to play 2 gigs in Trikala as part of Horns Up Festival. And one of those gigs was a full acoustic set to kick off the entire festival. And we practiced that set for months. Like, I was terrified of going in to play an acoustic set. That is not usually my thing. And we were like, it's a heavy metal thing. Are people going to hate it? Like, how's this going to translate? But the more and more we practiced it, we started to realize like it was fun. It was good. Like, we enjoyed it. And we had a couple like private concerts for our friends practicing those songs, and they all loved it. And we were like, okay, well, what are we going to do with this? So when that came up, like it seemed like a natural fit.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I love the choice too. The room that it was in, it was like, these guys are obviously, or you in particular, are huge collectors of everything that's old school, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of perfect, right? Like when you have your own wall of Frazettas, it's like, you gotta show that shit off.
For sure. Shifting gears to your other life, you are well known as a journalist in the metal community with some fantastic work that showcases on the concept of, or the subject of, the new wave of traditional heavy metal. You have an impressive collection of physical albums, and we also recommend our viewers to check out your segments on Banger TV. How do you scour the underground for these bands and just find all the gems that you find?
So I also have another job. I work for Bandcamp. So I spend all day, every day on Bandcamp, on the website. Basically like working on, working on all sorts of stuff. So part of that is obviously great because it means that I always have about 15 tabs open and I'm always listening to bands that I'm encountering all over the place. So yeah, my entire like life is music. And I'm very, very, very lucky in that way. There's a reason why I am active on social media. It's because, I want musicians to be my friends and I want, hardcore music fans to be my friends. And so generally what I'll do is like every single thing that I come across in my Facebook feed, I'll save the link. And then, about once a week, I'll go through and I'll listen to every single recommendation. And I mean, it means that there's lots of music that's not great or stuff that's not good for me, but it also means that I'm constantly like finding new bands. And not only that, but I'm receiving, 50 press releases every single day about new releases. So that makes it really easy. The tagging system in Bandcamp, I use that a lot. Like if you click on a tag in there, you'll get brought to a page. Like the epic heavy metal tag is a perfect one for Smoulder and for my taste. So I'll click on those constantly, and it's like, if I haven't heard something that's on that page, then I'm going to listen to it. So, yeah, I just listen to heavy metal, like, all day, every single day. So,
living the dream.
Yeah, it's good.
For sure. Yeah, no, we've been big supporters and early adopters of Bandcamp, so I think that's really cool. I didn't know that you were employed by them. I tell everybody Bandcamp is where it's at, and it's great because it's one of those mediums where people who have more of an aptitude towards like physical collections and things like that can also you can get the high quality digital stuff, but it also speaks to, buying merchandise, or you can download like the PDF with the liner notes and the high res images of the front and the back and all that stuff. So it's not like a traditional, digital music store where you're only getting like an MP3. It's like you can do a variety of audio formats and all that stuff. So yeah, we love Bandcamp.
I've only been working at Bandcamp now for like 2.5 years, I think. About that, maybe 3, getting close to 3-ish. And that was exactly it. Like, I've been working in the music industry since I was 17. I'm now in my 30s. Just coming up to this point where I've worked previous jobs in the industry where I was like, okay, like I'm mainly working with mainstream bands, but that's like not where my heart is, And I used to run a music magazine in Western Canada for several years. And I loved that, like, because when I ran the music magazine, it was like, I'd go through 80 pages of copy and I would listen to every single band that we covered in the entire magazine. And I wanted to be back in that. And like, obviously the music industry, the job situation, COVID has decimated it, but COVID notwithstanding also decimated. Like there's just not a lot there. So I started like teaching myself all sorts of like tech stuff over the last like 10 years, just trying to kind of help the businesses that I was working for become more web savvy, more social media savvy. And so that eventually led to a job at Bandcamp, which I do not take for granted. I love being there.
Very awesome.
Like, hands down, the best music company in the world.
Sarah, we are wrapping up here, so it's time for the plugs and the shout-outs, and we'd like to know if you have any other projects that are in your life that you'd like our friends to know about, and what can we expect from the future of Smoulder? Go for it.
We're working on our second album right now. I'm not going to even project a date because we have no idea when it'll be out, but hopefully we'll have a second album in the next couple of years. And I don't do other artistic projects, but Smoulder consumes a lot of my time, and I'll be designing the liner notes for this album. And I'm doing like ink art because I'm also like a painter and an artist in my own respective way. And I guess for friend bands, I should talk about my bandmates' other bands. Colin is in a band called Fair de Lance. They're awesome. They were signed to Cruz del Sur. They sound like Bathory, like Blood on Ice era, and they're really good, like epic, dark, heavy metal. Vincent, our guitarist, has a solo project called Ezra Brooks, and they are currently working on a split and some other recordings. So yeah, those two bands, everyone should listen to Ezra Brooks and to Fair de Lance. And hopefully, if there is a vaccine for COVID, then hopefully we will be playing at Keep It True next year, as well as the makeup date for Hell's Heroes, and hopefully some more dates as well. Oh yeah, and go to smoulder.bandcamp.com to buy stuff from us.
Yes, yeah. Well, we encourage all of our fans to definitely check out the Bandcamp, and I know that people can be kind of, you know, depending on what your work situation is right now, depending on what your economic situation is right now, the next best thing, if you can't open up your wallet, is to really just share the music, is share the videos, share the Bandcamp links and stuff like that, and talk about how much you love Smoulder, especially. So thank you, Sarah. It's been a real treat speaking with you and hearing about Smoulder and your work as a journalist. It's just fascinating stuff.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate the interview. And yeah, definitely I want to also hammer what you just said home about COVID. And I just hope that everybody is home, safe, washing their hands, taking care of each other. And, you know, just being as empathetic and kind as they possibly can. Because like this shit has been really hard and it's been unprecedented, and it's important that we all just keep that in mind and be as kind as possible to each other. So,
amen. As always, friends, support Smoulder, as we just said, by purchasing their music or sharing it around. Their latest EP, Dream Quest Ends, is out on Cruz del Sur Music and can be found in the links below. As always, be safe. We'll see you around.